Okay, I was like, I didn't do the recording thing, but maybe it's because you have the AI notes.
Oh, let me get rid of that. Sorry about that. It comes
Okay.
on, let's see, comes on automatically. So
No
see
worries.
if I can get rid of it. Did I get rid of it or did I just hide it?
It says recording, so hopefully
Okay.
on your end you have it or we have it. We're gonna set the intention.
Okay, we're good.
Welcome back to another episode of the Rock Your Comeback podcast. I'm your host, Nichole Eaton, and I have a really cool guest today. She is the founder of Pulse Marketing and author of Exposed You Can't Heal When You Hide. Welcome, Serena Mastin.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I am humbled and honored, and I look forward to sharing my story.
I always love to introduce my audience to the coolest people, and I would love for you to give like a little background on yourself if you don't mind.
Oh, well, it's a big background, but I so I grew up in witness protection and several foster homes when I was a child due to traumatic sexual abuse in the home. And by the time I was 16, I was living on the streets. But I was determined to graduate and I put myself through high school, graduated, and then climbed the corporate ladder. And I was in working with corporate organizations for about 17 years. And then I started Pulse Marketing, the marketing and advertising agency. And during that period of my life, I was married. My husband was charismatic and just had an infectious personality. So he decided to quit his job and come work in the agency. And in doing so, what it did is it basically kind of wove my personal and professional life into one, which I didn't realize would be as challenging as it was. And he struggled with mental health issues. He struggled with suicidal tendencies and multiple infidelities. And so after 10 years of being married, and at that time, about 7 years running the agency, I realized it was impacting my health. And so I found the courage to leave him. And when I did in March of 2020, he committed suicide. So that not only impacted my business and my personal life, but everything in between. And so for the last 4 years, I wrote a book, I rebuilt the agency, and that's kind of where I came from and where I am today.
Holy shit. I mean, as many adversities and adverse situations that you could possibly pack into into your lifetime you experience. And I think for a lot of people, even one of those scenarios would be the one that takes you out. I'm curious, like if we go all the way back to this witness protection, all I keep thinking is if I have to hide my identity, how do I know who I am at such a young age?
Well, it that is actually the pattern that flowed through my entire life up to writing the book. And that's why it's called Exposed,
Yeah.
because my pattern was to hide. So whether it was hiding literally in the closet, like when I was a little girl and I was scared, or under my bed, right? All the way to being a grown woman and hiding behind this strong persona that I have it all together when the world behind me is crumbling and hiding what other people do or did at that time to protect them and to protect me. So I had to learn how to separate that, how to accept who I was and stop hiding and start to actually expose my truth, which is then kind of what translates into to who I am today.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of people who are listening right now who can relate, whether they maybe started off hiding for a really good reason. Maybe they were hiding to protect themselves physically. Maybe they were hiding to, um, you know, be invisible to somebody who was trying to hurt them. Or maybe they were hiding as a people pleasing tendency, so they didn't rock the boat. And for you, it looks like it kind of landed you in this corporate environment where I'm hiding behind this illusion of perfectionism.
that I have it all together, that I can balance the chaos, that all of it. And I think
So
for
much pressure on
people,
women.
we don't even realize that we're hiding. We
Yeah.
think we're surviving.
What was the point for you where you were like, I recognize that I'm hiding? How did you uncover that for yourself?
It's so interesting. I actually didn't really recognize the pattern until I started writing. Whenever you're writing a book, and just know I'm not an author, right? Like I was not born to be an author. I'm not a writer. I actually had to hire a book coach to teach me how to write and to be accountable, right? So just so you know, it's all post-traumatic wisdom. I don't have any like crazy education behind it. But what I learned through that process is you have to actually bring yourself into the moment, and this process helps me now today. So, for instance, when you have something that's happened to you or that's happening to you, you have to close your eyes and you have to visualize the moment. And how does that make you feel? Does it tense your shoulders? Is your neck getting stiff? How does your heart rate feel? You experience the moment. And that same writing practice, what it does is it actually makes you relive the trauma, right? But then when you are finished experiencing that moment and you calm your heart back down, then you could recognize and have clarity as to what you are actually doing when you're in a stressful situation. So it's really a reflection, and it's a moment in time where you have to stop and really look inward, because a lot of times you won't see that you're doing it. I'm highly self-aware, and I was so self-aware that I was in denial about hiding things. I thought that it meant I was being strong. I thought it meant that I was protecting others. I thought it meant that I was doing the right thing. And in reality, when I really got calm and looked within to see what my true intentions were, I recognized that it was continuously hiding something. And that's how you see it. It's not something that you can just take off a blindfold one day and be like, oh, I've been hiding this whole time. Like, you have to look inward.
Self. You really have to create time. And I think especially we're talking about, busy mom, corporate woman, like we're talking about all of these roles where it is so hard or can be more challenging to actually take time to tune back within. And what I'm hearing you say is like until you do that, until you take that time to tune back within and sit with that. And I love the way you broke this down, Serena, because there's so many books that talk about you need to emotionally process it. You need like and not a lot of people and places, and I'm praying Rock Your Comeback does a good job at this, but not a lot does say, but here's how to emotionally process. Here's how you're going to start looking through your things. And I love the practice of sitting and writing and feeling through it. I know for me, even when I wake up and I feel just a little off, like instead of going into my morning routine, I have to sit and just type it all out, and I type every batshit crazy thought I have, and I don't judge it, and I just let it get out of me so I can take a look at it. Because most of the time, if I don't, it just spins. And then I feel off all day. But if I take some time and I just sit with it and I'm just like, oh, like I'm really tired today and my heart feels really heavy today. And like, I wonder what that is. And give myself a chance to actually sit with that. It makes a world of difference. So imagine going back through this traumatic past that you've had in starting that process of sitting with that. So you discover you're hiding. Then what?
Yeah.
What
So,
happens
so
next?
once you discover it, then you're highly aware of it, right? So then you recognize that you do it in different ways, and you're so good at doing it that um, you justify it. So that's the challenge, is that we have to not only stop, recognize it, but then we have to understand what are our habits that we do when we're hiding. So, for instance, it's really easy to say, When I'm hiding, I'm protecting,
Mm.
right? I'm protecting someone. When I'm hiding, I'm pretending. It's easy to say those things. Um, but how do you see those things? You have to have a moment of reflection like we just talked about, but then you also have to write down the things that you do when you hide so that you're aware of that, because you might think you know, and writing it down in a journal, whatever it may be, will help you to be more accountable. So your self accountability is a huge part of it. The reason I share that the way that I do is because my version of hiding continued to transform. So it's almost like, when you have somebody who has an addiction, they
Yeah.
stop one addiction and then they start another. So let's say I'm, you know, I'm a workaholic and I work all the time, because what does that do? That makes you feel like you're accomplishing something. Well, then when you realize you're a workaholic and you need to stop it, then you decide, well, I'm now going to overexert myself in exercise. And then you become like addicted to exercise, whatever. And those are really lighthearted things, right? But this can apply to anything. And once you recognize that you're just transferring your addiction, just like you would be transferring your behavior, my behavior started to transform from being overproductive and protecting and pretending to shutting down, sleeping, and hiding physically.
Okay.
So then the depression started coming in. Then the shame and the guilt started to set in even more, because now I'm not pretending. Now I'm in it. So there's two big phases that you have to really look at: is first acknowledge what you're doing, then acknowledge the second step is, what is it transforming into? And then how do I, now I'm not saying to stop it, because it is part of your natural behavior, right? How do I transform it? So, how do I transform scarcity into abundance? How do I transform fear into courage? Right? So, the first part is understanding it, your awareness about it, and then holding yourself accountable. And then the other part is surrounding yourself with people that you're not afraid to share that part of you with. So you have a community that that can completely wrap their arms around you when you're in it.
Yeah. Oh, that's so beautiful. And it was so well put, because that's exactly right. Is sometimes we do these habits unconsciously and we're protecting. And I know, I actually just in a vulnerable share kind of way, I have been working on, I was putting out a lot of content on the internet for a while, and I had some really scary things happen with random strangers on the internet. I had some people like find my phone number and call me in the middle of the night and leave uneasy voicemails. And it started to make me very protective over my family. And so I stopped sharing a lot of my personal life because I was getting so freaked out about it. And then I kind of just like kept restricting, and I could feel myself doing that, of like nothing felt safe to share. And like, is my house number in any of these posts? Like, just had like all of this anxiety around being seen. And so it trickled for a while. And so I've been doing work these last few months on like letting myself be seen and finding safe ways to be seen. But especially for somebody who has a history of trauma or who had something scary, I think that the problem I come up against personally in my mind of like, I know people like that are out there. I know I have two little girls to protect. How do I make it safe for myself to stop hiding?
I have to say, this is not something that I came up with, okay? But it was something that was taught to me. So I completely resonate with you, and thank you for being vulnerable. Um, I, I'm, I fear sales, for instance. Okay, I know that sounds weird, but when I was doing sales meetings, or I was going to meetings in person for my agency, men that I would be meeting with would cross boundaries. So similar situation, but just a little bit different in the sense of like, yeah, they're not coming to my home, but they're definitely I'm in a private setting in an office that is now making me feel very uncomfortable. I don't know how to leave. So somebody taught me this. They said, they have a military background. They said, when you're in a dangerous situation, um, and you're in the military, the first thing that you do is you map out all of the exit strategy. And I was like, okay, so I'm like trying to think like a military person. Like, I've never been in the military, I've known nothing about it. But they made it really simple. They said, you have to map out your exit plan. You have to think of what are the worst case scenarios and what is the solution before it happens. And you have to kind of have a almost like a three-step guide to saying, okay, if this uncomfortable situation happens, these are my three steps that I'm going to use to exit this situation. Now, if those don't work, then you have to have a backup strategy. And so to put this in practice, um, he said, when you enter the room, you observe. So that's what a military person would do when they're entering a dangerous location, right? They stop, they observe the location. Visualizing this helps me. And so once they visualize the location, now they go into every opportunity to exit the location. Okay. And then they come up with their game plan in their mind of if something goes wrong, what are the steps I need to take? And so those three little like steps that he gave me shifted my entire mindset. And the reason is because now, instead of putting myself out there in a way that allows people to come in that, or into my space that is potentially unsafe, um, I have boundaries. I have specific boundaries. I remember them because I have an acronym for them. So my boundaries are BRAVE. The B stands for actual boundaries to remind myself to create them because I won't. R is reliability. You do what you say you're going to do. So if somebody you're interacting with doesn't follow through, that's a really big red flag and it's not following through with my boundaries. A is for accountability. You own what you do. I don't own what the other person does. I only own what I do. Okay. V is for vulnerability. I can be vulnerable, but that doesn't mean that I have to open myself up to everyone. I get to choose who I'm vulnerable with. And E stands for equal effort. That means if that other person is not fully being open and honest or is not giving me the same respect that I am equally giving that person, those are my boundaries. And if one of those is crossed, then the conversation is over. Then I need to find a way to safeguard my environment. For your situation, it's unique because it's online. It's a much different, like, right? Like mine's in person, so I'm terrified. I have to get out, right?
I like the
Yours is
idea of having like an exit strategy, or like sometimes I will just kind of disappear for like a couple days and disconnect and take, the apps off my phone just to create my own safe bubble. Because in the reality of things, I am safe. So like,
what?
how you're talking about it in person is kind of like, if you're rock climbing and you've got your safeties on, that
Yeah,
you've got all these backup things to do. And yeah, so I know for me, like that's one thing that I do that is a little bit of a safety for me is kind of step back, reassess, reclaim my space before I step back in.
exactly. And creating that something memorable, like your boundaries, like my brave, right? Puts me in a position where I remember it. So it's not something that in a panic state that it completely leaves my mind, right? That's a lot of times when we go into a panic state, we go into that shock moment where we don't know how to respond, a deer in headlights kind of thing. When you have things that are memorable that you're constantly reminding yourself of, then when you are in a shock state, you're more likely to follow the things that are familiar. So the exit strategy, creating those boundaries for yourself and kind of mapping out if this happens, then I do this. That then gives you an extra level of safety. It doesn't necessarily mean that not, things won't always come up because people, broken people hurt other people, right? But it does put you in a position where you're more in control of your environment.
I love it. I love that. I think it's going to be helpful both on, both online for people listening and businesses that are listening who do feel in that more vulnerable space, but also in person for, and I think a lot of people who have been hurt in the past in a physical manner, like having that tactic, it actually makes me think of The Art of War. Have you read that book?
No, but I have to now.
It's basically planning for things to go wrong. And, obviously I'm a big manifestation person, but I think in a scenario where you're already feeling unsafe, setting those intentions, but also keeping yourself grounded in the scenario where you're paying attention to your surroundings is super helpful. So when you were processing through coming out of this hiding spot and we're writing it out through this book, how did you get to the other side where it felt a little safer for you?
So I had to recognize that I'm the only one that can create safety. So throughout my life, I asked or wanted or yearned for other people to make me feel safe. And that is not something that you can put on someone else, nor is it something that most people follow through with, just to be honest. And when I recognize that I'm the one that's responsible for making myself feel safe, it changed my mindset, it changed my perception. And then how did I do that? Um, my only way of making myself feel safe in unsafe circumstances is to face them. So, for instance, I was terrified to be in the spotlight. I thrive behind the scenes. So, even doing a podcast for me was not a safe environment. It was scary. People are judging me, all of the big words, right? And what I did is I had to continuously face and do the things that scared me until I felt comfortable in those places. It's facing it over and over again until you finally feel like it has no effect on you anymore. So that would be my best recommendation. Obviously, I'm not saying for somebody to go into a very physical, unsafe environment and face it. I am saying that's how you do it, like internally. When it comes to a physically unsafe environment, my huge recommendation and what I learned is roadmaps. You can't just leave immediately an unsafe situation, especially if it's involving your spouse, a relationship, someone you live with. You have to prepare. And so you have to create a plan. You have to get specific people you know around you that you trust deeply. And you have to then follow through with the plan. It's your exit strategy when you're in a physically unsafe place. That is a huge process that you have to actually focus on. But you're the other way is what I was referencing, which is mentally, you just have to shift it and face the fear that you have because that fear will then start to dissolve.
Yeah. I think that's true for most things. And the person I'm thinking of right now is my friend Christy. When we first started our business together in New York, we would do these videos and they weren't even live. They didn't have lives back when we started our business. Okay. It was like 2013, 2014. Like it was not a thing. So we were doing YouTube videos, but we were filming and just in the privacy. And she would just, anytime I turned the camera on, just panic attack. And we would, like have to stop and start over. She does lives now, like 2 to 3 times a week, effortlessly, flawlessly, like public speaks. And it's just so funny to think back that if she had let that fear of being seen stop her from progressing, she would never be in the situation she's in. And I think it's easy to let that fear build up to make it feel like we're not supposed to do that.
Yes.
How do you counter that? Like that feeling like where we kind of convince ourselves that, well, maybe I'm just not supposed to be seen, or maybe I'm just not supposed to have a different life, or maybe I'm
Because that's our denial, that's our justification, that is validating the victim, right? But we are not victims. And in all honesty, I don't really even like the word survivor. I prefer warrior. A warrior goes into battle. So, in order to overcome that fear, we have to reframe our mindset that we are not a victim of our circumstances. We are a warrior in that moment. And we have to really use that positive reinforcement to get ourselves out there. We cannot let those circulating thoughts of, oh, I'm just gonna, I'm not meant for this. Those thoughts, all they're gonna do is continue to rot and decay within you. And then it'll start to impact you physically. And then it'll start to impact your health, all of those things. If you allow those thoughts in, they will just continue to like just grow inside of you and it'll always stop you. It's being aware that those thoughts are there and they're okay, but they're not for me.
It's also giving yourself permission to tell the truth. I think
And
that's
it
a
feels so much better.
yeah. And I always say to people and clients, like, if you feel like you can't speak your truth out loud because it means I've got to be making a decision right now that I'm not prepared to make or don't have the resources to make, even just the willingness to tell yourself your own truth helps you create those roadmaps. But you can't have the roadmaps when you're hiding, and you can't tell the truth when you're hiding either, because I really think that's really what it comes down to, is a misalignment between what I really desire and my fear. My fear is keeping me from what I really desire. And so it's all kind of intertwined. And I love that practice that you referenced when we first started talking, of sitting down with yourself, sitting down in your self-awareness, because you can't do any of this if you don't have the awareness of what's going on in your head, and you haven't created any time to even say, how am I feeling about anything at all in my life? And I think that's one of the most powerful and honestly, I don't want to say easiest tools, but I think just creating 10 minutes for yourself is one of the most powerful things that you can do in your life starting today that can change everything.
And it's also like a silly thing because you're like, "Ugh, I don't have time to be writing down exactly how I feel right now. I have to be working. I have to be productive," right? You go back into the doing stage. And so I think the best way to describe it is your value and your worth is not based on what you can do in the doing stage. It's based on who you are in the being stage. Who are you being? And so even if it's 5 minutes, I mean, you could probably spend 5 minutes in the bathroom and bring a notepad. Like you can. It's really only 5 minutes. And it's changing your mindset from who am I being and what am I doing? I don't want to be a doer. I want to be someone that inspires others. I want to be, someone who's not hiding, right? So who am I being right now? Or am I doing a lot of things? And that's where a lot of women get stuck in the hamster wheel because they're doers and they're doing so much that it distracts them from who they are, who who they're being and how they're being perceived.
I actually had this conversation with my kids the other day. Because when I was younger, like, I couldn't rest until everything was done. Like, the house was picked up and the homework was done. Like, everything had to be done for me to rest. And so I'm trying to undo that within myself, of that it's okay to rest and then I can finish the stuff later. Or it's okay that the kids aren't doing their homework the second they get home. They can do that later. Like, I've had to rewire that because I have this story from childhood that you have to get everything done before you can sit down for a minute. And if you sit down for a minute, you just feel guilty the whole time. Like, it's a whole thing that I've been really like talking with my kids about, is that it's okay to just exist. It's okay to be. Another way that I love to do this kind of alone time is really good questions. And one of my favorite questions, like when you're in that feeling space, is what's under the surface. I love that question. I love just sitting with that. Okay, so I'm feeling this heaviness on my heart, but what's under the surface of that? And a lot of times when we ask ourselves questions, our brain will answer, our intuition will answer, and
Yeah.
we'll receive a little clarity on what's really there that we're dealing with, instead of just the feeling that's on sitting on top of everything.
Well, and you reminded me of something that happened to me that was really a huge turning point for me. I remember talking to a counselor that I was, with and had been with for probably 8 years. And this is right before I had the courage to leave my husband. And I said, I'm a businesswoman, I'm an amazing mother, I'm an amazing wife, I'm good in bed. Like I am awesome in every way. And like I had this whole list of things that I accomplished and all these things. And he said, Serena, you may be good at all of those things, but I want you to recognize that you can't earn love. It has to be freely given. You can't earn validation. It has to be freely given. That's yours. And it was one of those things that I just never even recognized that I was so worried about doing and earning and being and approval and validation and my worth and my value. And why can't everybody see how awesome I am? That I had to recognize that those things are not things to earn, that love and value and worth, those are free. You just have to see that within yourself. You can't earn that. And doing puts us in that stage.
And being is a place we can access those things.
Exactly. And being is the place we access that.
How did you begin to access that love and belonging and separating that from other people? Because as people who are listening, who are high achievers, who are women, who are perfectionistic, it does feel like we've been trained to work towards love, to hustle towards love. And how can someone begin to separate that?
So it is not something I've mastered. So let me just say that first.
All a work in progress over here.
Um, I have a wealth of post traumatic wisdom, is what I always say. Uh,
Beautiful.
I would say it's a daily practice. It's just like anything that you would practice, right? You don't just, jump on the stage and you're the top speaker in America, right? Like you have to practice. And so I've continuously practiced small little changes to remind myself, like, and ask the question, am I doing or am I being? And I have to keep asking myself those questions multiple times a day, not just once. And how am I showing up? Like, am I showing up as someone who is open, present, and here to receive, listen, and support? Or am I showing up as someone who's trying to do all these things and earn something or protect someone? I had to really like remind myself on a daily basis. And my big practice is breathing. The box breathing really helps me. So if I'm asking myself that question, it's because I'm in the middle of what? Doing. Right? I'm in it. I'm doing. And then what do you do when you're doing? You can just keep going. And so I have to stop and do the box breathing. The, 5 seconds breathe in, stop, or hold your breath, and 5 seconds breathe out, right? Like I have to do that and ask myself, am I being right now or am I doing? Who am I being? And who do I want to be? And so that would be my daily practice to shift it. It's not a overnight thing. I wish it was. Because I'd be like, I'd check that off the list real quick.
Done. Nailed it.
Nailed it. Because I'm a doer.
I love how you break this down because one of the things I've actually been like talking a lot about in my membership and just in general is I wrote 2 books. I love intellectualizing things. I love knowing why something happened, and I love knowing where it came from, and I think that stuff is super important for self-awareness. But what you're doing in the practices that you're integrating into your day are really that nervous system regulation where, okay, I know I'm doing this. I can see I'm doing this. I see why maybe. Here's how I'm going to handle that in the moment so I don't get so lost in my head that I detach entirely from my body. And that's such a beautiful balance that you've created and that you're sharing with people because we can get so like, well, I know why I am the way I am, but to stop and do something different is the challenge of the century right now for everybody.
Yes.
And this is
Self-awareness is
exactly it.
great, but if you don't have action, then you're just aware of being in the same space over and over and over again, which is then not helping you move forward. So the self-awareness is only one piece. Practice is actually putting it in to your daily life daily, and it's practice. So you can't actually overcome those things if you just are aware of them.
100%. Have you ever read Becoming Supernatural by Joe Dispenza?
No, I've used so many books I have to read now.
It's just like a mind-blowing thing about energy, and he talks about how when we are so externally focused, we've got the kids soccer, games, we've got the chorus concerts, we've got stuff with our spouse, we've got all these things outside of us, our business, whatever. It's like creating spider webs to those things around us, and that when we start to bring our focus and our attention back inward, it's like cutting those spider webs around us, and it kind of frees us of the things that are weighing on us. And I think about that all the time of like, how do I cut some of these spider webs? Because I mean, I'm in busy season. I've got 3 chorus concerts this week. I had a concert that was like a hosier. Last night I had my daughter's playoffs for softball on top of, I run 3 businesses. So like I'm in busy season right now, and I've had to really stop, even if I'm just sitting in my car for 5 minutes and breathing, reclaiming my energy so that I'm not getting caught up in the busyness and the chaos and running from here to there without being intentional about it at all. Like for me, intention is the core of my life. And if I'm not, I'm in chaos, and I know that about myself. And so that self-awareness can pair with an activity. And for those of you listening, Serena's offered so many beautiful, beautiful practices so that you can start the process. And just to explain box breathing for a moment, if you're not familiar, it's that breathing in over a count of 4, holding it for a count of 4, exhaling it for a count of 4, and then holding that exhale for a count of 4. It's that easy. So you can throw that into your day. Even if you just have a moment where you are recognizing that the chaos is becoming you, or you're recognizing that you're hiding, or you're recognizing that you've got a lot on your plate, or that you're not holding any space for yourself amidst all your daily activities. So I'm so grateful for this conversation, because I know these tools that you've shared and in your story are really going to help a ton of people.
Thank you. I am just excited to be a part of this, and anyone that I can even make a little bit of a difference or give them a little tip or a little tool, that to me is such a huge blessing. So thank you for even having me.
And I know that people are going to want to get in contact with you, work with you, buy your book. I will drop everything in the show notes, but just verbally, how can they contact you, reach out?
Yes. So for reaching me directly and or looking for my book, serenamastin.com is my personal website. And obviously they can put in Serena Mastin on Amazon too. You'll find me right next to Serena Williams, but that, we're not associated. Um, and then also, if they want more information about my agency, that is at heartofcreative.com.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your story, or your post-traumatic wisdom. I love that phrase. So lucky to have you, and make sure to check her out and pick up her book, Exposed. You Can't Heal When You Hide. Thanks for coming.